what do people mean by law of the land?
Once again, they don't know what they mean.
Yeah,
But I'll tell you what they mean. They really picture as if in this place there's these magical rules that are like floating in the air of what we all have to live by was threats made up by the politicians. It has nothing to do with the land. It has nothing to do with society. They'll also talk about how society has decided that we need 300 pages of regulations for growing cabbage. No, society decided no such thing. Society was duped into believing we need a ruling class, and then the ruling class made up this bogus stuff and called it law. And most people really and truly view those threats as if they are commands from on high, as if disobedience to them is a sin, instead of just, well, a gang of thugs made a threat. Maybe I can get away with disobeying, maybe not, whatever. But the law is no more legitimate than the demand of an average street gang. But people have been trained to think that it is.
What does it mean to commit a crime?
It depends who you ask. In the mind of the average statist, it means disobeying any of the arbitrary edicts of the ruling class. There are some of us who would only call it a crime if you have an actual victim, like actual bad behavior, like violent aggression. But to most people, it means disobeying any of the bogus stuff that the ruling class makes up and calls law.
What does it mean when someone says the military defends the country?
It means they don't nearly understand reality. Well, as with everything, the ruling class always has to pretend that it's serving the people. They can't just come along and say, we're going to violently subjugate you and rob you because, well, we feel like it and we like power and money. They have to pretend to be serving the people. So they have this giant war machine that's off doing its imperialist routine, and they have to pretend that that's defense. And that's been true of every regime, including the most, obviously tyrannical regimes around. Mainly I use Nazi Germany because it's the one Americans have heard of, even though it's only like third worst as far as body count. But the Nazis pretended they were just defending themselves too, and they invaded Poland and they invaded France and kill people and blow things up. They always have to pretend that their violent aggression they do with their military is defensive, because otherwise they couldn't get soldiers and their citizens to go along with it. So they have to paint it as defense. Nothing the U.S. government has done in my lifetime called a defense of the country. Notice how rarely there's like a day in the War of 1812 when the British came into Michigan, I think. That was like the only thing you could have pretended was actually defending the country. But yeah, it's a euphemism for violent aggression by the military.
Yeah. In your most recent video, Socialism, Expectation versus Reality, you just read the Soviet Constitution and it's like, do you really think evil people will come out and say, let's go kill innocent people just for power? No, of course they always spice it up to sell to the public, and nothing says it more clearly. Or look at the Venezuelan Constitution of 1999. It doesn't say, well, within 15 years, everyone's going to be starving. No, it says everyone has a right to food and life, of course, obviously. What is free healthcare and education?
A total lie. Well, as it happens, those two things are specifically in the Constitution of the Soviet Union, that people have a right to education and a right to free healthcare, just like Bernie presents. Of course, there isn't such thing as free any of that because somebody's paying for it. What they mean is we're going to force somebody else to pay for it and you get it for free. And it's just, it's a very simple scam that the politicians run by telling people, hey, if you put us into power, we'll give you free stuff. And we don't really need to talk about how we're going to pay for it, which is by robbing other people. In fact, we're not going to mention the fact that it's also by robbing you. Like the free stuff we give you, we're also going to rob you to pay for it. It's just, it's a pathetically transparent sales pitch. And it's sad that it still works on so many people that they don't even take 2 seconds to say, wait, how do you pay for it? Where does it come from? They don't just make stuff appear. Somebody had to pay for this school building. School buildings don't build themselves. doctors and hospitals don't just magically appear for free. Where's it coming from? But most Americans are so childish and immature in the way they look at the world. They just think, oh, Bernie wants to give me free stuff. Let's put him into office, because they don't think 2 seconds past that to say, well, how do you pay for it? Well, by violence.
And then I saved my favorite one for last, the social contract.
The social contract is another one of the best excuses that tyrants have to commit violence. Again, it has a lot to do with, it goes along with the notion of voting, where it's like, you consented to this. Only the social contract is even more bizarre, because it basically says, well, by falling out of your mom on this piece of dirt, that counts as you agreeing for the rest of your life to be subjected to the arbitrary whims of the ruling class over in DC. It's just so patently stupid. And the funny thing is, it gives away a huge collectivist mentality and status, because what they're really saying is that they believe the politicians in DC own every square inch of this country, quote unquote. Because if they didn't, like, I don't get to say, hey, by living in your own house, you're agreeing to give me $100 a week. Like, what? No, you don't get to do that unless it's your house. So it really is people saying that they think the politicians own everything, and that us being on the politicians' property to go along with anything they say. And it's that bad. And then I wrote a thing not that long ago pointing out, if you accept that premise, then there's no such thing as unalienable rights anymore. Because if they own it, they can make up any damn rules they want. They can say, give us all your money or leave the country. What would the status objection be to that if he believes in the social contract, this magic thing you never agreed to? Well, if tomorrow politicians say, give us all your stuff or get out of the country, according to the social contract theory, that's perfectly legitimate. And we're all just all the way slaves or leave the continent.